When answering exam questions, there are a few key things to remember, right? So just remember, exam technique is a key part in preparation for any exams, and it's something that you'll pick up the more you go and you do past papers. Right, so many questions in exams are repeats of what will be in old exams. So going and looking at lots of generic questions beforehand is a good idea. When going and answering and questions and reading them, there's a few things just take into account. Make sure you go read the question at least twice so you don't make any mistakes when you're reading them. As you're reading them, go highlight key information. Don't make assumptions about what the question's asking. Make sure after you've answered it, you go check your work for daft errors that you might make. And if it involves going and answering something where there's some calculation, make sure that you write your workings out down. Right, let's go and have a look at the question.
This question, we are going to look at the digestive system. Right, before we actually go and look at the question, I just want to go and remind us a few key things about the digestive system. So remember, the digestive system is what we're using to, right, the key thing is it's absorbing things, so nutrients, into the bloodstream. Remember, it starts in the mouth. So in the mouth, we go and we have saliva. So saliva goes and contains amylase. Amylase is an enzyme and it's at pH 7. Right, we'll just look at that in a minute again. Right, remember, enzymes are little proteins that go and catalyze the breakdown of molecules. Right, so we start off with the enzyme and the substrate. Right, all the substrate is the molecule it's breaking down. That goes and forms an enzyme substrate complex. Then the enzyme releases those products and the enzyme can be used again. So just moving back, so we start off in the mouth, then we go down and the food moves down the esophagus, then into the stomach, and we'll look at the conditions and such forth in a second. Remember that you've got the bile being produced in the liver, then stored in the gallbladder. Then pancreatic juices go and flow into the top of the small intestines, and then food finally passes out through the large intestines. Right, and we'll look at the conditions for them in a second. So the first part of this question goes and it's got some diagram in. So the key thing here is it's talked about the fact about the conditions in the different parts. So in the mouth, it's talking about the fact that you've got the salivary glands there. The salivary glands produce amylase and the pH is pH 7. Remember that enzymes have optimum pHs. Then it talks about the stomach. It talks about the pH in the stomach and the fact that it makes protease. Remember, proteases are breaking down proteins. Right, then the pancreas pH 8.5 and it's producing amylase, lipase and protease. And finally you've got the small intestines, which is also at pH 8.5 and it's also got amylase, lipase and protease in it. So we start off, so the diagram gives information about some parts of the digestive system. So which part makes the bile? Right, remember the bile is being made in the liver. Right, it's made in the liver, then it's stored in the gallbladder. Don't go and make the mistake of saying it's made by the gallbladder, because it isn't. So the second part is label which organ, so letter X on the diagram, so X is going to be the liver there. So information from the table can be used to help parts B and C. Right, so remember, you need to go, right, the table's there to be used, keep referring back to it. Name two parts of the digestive system where protein is digested. Remember that the enzyme that's going to go and break down protein is that protease enzyme. So the only place where we've got protease present, so protease is present just there. So it's present in the pancreas, The pancreas, though, is going and putting the protease into the small intestines, remember. And the protease is present in the stomach. So the two parts where protein will be broken down will be the stomach and the small intestines. Right, finally, it says suggest 2 reasons. Right, importantly, it's saying suggest 2 reasons why starch is not digested in the stomach. So this is all about, because we've not really talked about those pHs. So this kind of all talks about the pHs in different parts. So the key reasons is that amylase is not produced in the stomach because we need amylase to go and break down starch. Then we need to talk about the fact that the stomach is at the wrong pH, so therefore the enzyme would be denatured. So stomach or amylase only works, so the amylase only works in neutral or slightly alkali conditions, so it won't work in the acidic conditions in the stomach. So moving on. So the next part of the question kind of focuses on the small intestines and the villi in particular. So remember that the villi, or the small intestines, is the main region where absorption is taking place. So we need to be aware of some of these adaptations of the villi. So remember that there's lots of them, so we have a very, very large surface area. There's a very, very good blood supply, so the nutrients are carried away, so we always maintain that concentration gradient. That's important to say. And finally, the cells are covered in lots of microvilli, and those microvilli have lots of mitochondria, so things can be moved in by active transport, and it also helps increase the surface area. So we go and we look at the question. So it starts off, so the small intestine are lined with millions of villi. So the diagram shows this below. Right, in the small intestines, some of the products are absorbed into the blood by active transport. So remember, active transport is moving things against the concentration gradient. So if we're looking at what's meant by active transport, the key things to talk about is the fact that we're moving it against the concentration gradient. It uses energy from respiration, and it also needs to use some sort of carrier protein to do this. Right, the second part is how do microvilli and mitochondria help active transport. So remember, we're relating it back to active transport of the products of digestion from the small intestines into the blood. So the microvilli, remember, that's all about increasing the surface area, and the mitochondria are all about releasing energy, or ATP, that is needed to go and carry out active transport.
So hopefully you have found that useful. If you've got any questions, then drop it in the comments below, and we'll be uploading a lot more. Right, good luck, folks.